Check, one, two, check, one, two. Alright guys, so I know I'm a little late with this video. It's a long time coming, and I know that I wanted to get it up actually beginning of December, but this is actually the video, as the title suggests, for Red Dead Redemption 2. So a little backstory on why this video is actually so late. So it all started with the fact that when the game first came out, I was taking my time, kind of enjoying it, and so many people were able to get their reviews up like so quickly. I was like, I made the decision to just sit back, enjoy it, and take my time with it. And so I was like, well, I'll wait till the review once the multiplayer comes out, see if it kind of adds to the game, detracts from the game, or if it doesn't do anything and doesn't add to the score at all. And so it's what I did, and I got probably about 50% or so of the way through the game. And when the multiplayer came out, I couldn't access single player, and I couldn't finish it. No joke. There was actually a bug that Rockstar didn't really talk much about, and it actually took them probably about 2 or 3 weeks to actually clear up. It was like right before Christmas that it finally got cleared up. And it was funny because they didn't really make any announcements about it until they had a list of bugs that they had reported that they were actually fixing, or with a particular update. And they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna fix that that issue where people couldn't log into their single player games. And I was like, dude, I was on your page, I was in your forums, like, saying, hey, something's going on where I can't log into my single player game now, what's up? And fucking crickets. And then all of a sudden, like, I thought maybe I was crazy, because I couldn't see anybody else with this problem at all. And they finally announced, oh yeah, we're gonna fix it, here's a patch for it. And I was like, okay. So I finally started getting to play a little bit of single player. I played some multiplayer because I was able to log into that, but I couldn't log into single player, whatever. And then of course holidays came on, and of course we had our emergency with Abby come up, and then just a lot of other scheduling issues. And it was actually one of the games that I really wanted to do like a full-fledged blown out review. And I'm not just talking about like here in the room, I meant like legitimately like doing like an Angry Joke style kind of review that had, I wanted to put in skits, and I wanted to sit there and actually like a standing, like talking, moving around, being animated kind of review. And eventually I'd like to do that, like I talked about in my update video. I'm a little disappointed that this is how I have to do the video, but at the same time it lets me go ahead and talk about multiplayer, and it gives me a chance to kind of air some grievances that I did have with the game, things that I felt like people didn't touch on or talk about. And and I guess more than anything, this is more of a discussion. I'm not really too worried too much about spoilers. I'm not going to sit there and talk too much about them, but if I do have one in there, here and there sprinkled in, just be warned, I guess. I'm not really thinking about or being conscious about it, seeing as the game's been out for nearly 3 months now. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. So first off, let's talk about the pros. One big pro is obviously the story. And it was one of those things where leading up to the game for a couple months before the game came out, I was a little worried. I was a little, there's two things. Number one, it's you always are waiting for that studio that is usually known for doing really good work. Look at Rockstar's track record between GTA and then obviously Red Dead, LA Noire, Max Payne. I'm sorry, that was I don't know why I had a fart on that one, but no, they've done some really great work over the last 8 to 10 years. And so you're bracing yourself because you know that I don't think it'll be quite as bad, but you always know that there's going to be eventually a game that's kind of like their 76. I mean, dear God, I mean, I don't actually mean that bad, like that buggy or that just nonsensical per se, but you're always waiting for that one that's a little bit more of a trip up and a falling on your face than an actual knocking it out of the park. But I'm glad I was wrong. I'm glad that Rockstar, you know, put me in my fucking place. And the story is definitely a pro. The story was smart, it was well written, well shot, well done, well executed. Dialogue was really, really good. The story does a great job of not trampling on the toes of its predecessor. And because of all of these things coming together in such a way, it led to some really heartfelt, genuine moments, as well as some great action moments and great whole moments. There's a lot of different clips that I can sit there and show without giving away too much in the story and without giving too much away in the main plot that are gripping because of great writing as well as the great facial animations and the great audio that goes along with it that helps sell this story to you.
You take the boy, Mrs. Braithwaite.
You stole my
Boys are off
liquor.
limits.
You stole my horses. Ain't no rules in war, mister.
Matthews.
Yes, that's it.
Where's the boy?
My sons gave him to Angelo Bronte. So my guess is Saint Denis. Either there or on my boat to Italy.
Let's go.
Arthur, come on! What are we doing with her? Leave her.
I told you she was crazy.
Especially because the second thing, obviously, is that doing prequels of games that are so beloved like Red Dead Redemption is among the community, it's risky because the biggest thing is even though you've established the lore with the first game, the biggest issue is always the fact that sometimes when you're going ahead, you got 8-9 years in between a game, you always run the risk, especially doing a prequel, of like missing little details, and then it's almost like you're retconning something and people are like, why are you retconning this? And obviously sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes it's not, so you run a really big risk. But I feel like with all the characters and with, you know, how they did it, I feel like they did a really, really good job. And I love seeing young John Marston. I probably spent 60 or 70 hours in the original Red Dead, maybe more, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't play a ton of the online. I know my brother did actually play a lot more of the online, but I played a ton of the single player. You know, and then seeing Dutch, you know, when he was younger and watching his mind deteriorate as time went on, it was really good. It was really treated. The dialogue was pretty good, and I really did dig the story. You know, I felt like they did about the best job that you possibly could doing a prequel of a game that you made, that you had come out 8 years prior to this one. I thought they did a pretty good job, and I mean, they should be well commended for it. Characters, that's another huge pro. Obviously, my biggest concern, other than the story potentially being bad, was I was really worried that Arthur Morgan was going to be John Marston 2.0, and I've said this to a few people. I think I've tweeted it out. You know, that was my biggest worry, was that he's just going to be John Marston 2.0, that they weren't going to be able to find a footing for him. But I was glad to be wrong about that. They actually made Arthur Morgan not only memorable, but they really made him stand out on his own. And you can kind of see some of the mannerisms that Arthur Morgan has kind of like influence and kind of like make their way into John Marston a little bit. And I really did dig Arthur Morgan, and I was really sad with his story, and I definitely felt that with Arthur's character, they did a great job of showcasing the fact that he had been this outlaw a lot longer than John ever was. He's been a lot more hardened, and now as we're seeing kind of the ends of his journey, you kind of see some of the remorse that he's had, and I mean, you get to make a lot of important decisions that affect the ending, and you get to affect his ending, and you get to see that he is both somewhat fearless and very intimidating in his own right, which definitely does make him stand out.
My husband's not cold in the ground, and you've come back here. Archie, I nearly paid off what was owed.
Your husband knew the rules when he took that money. Now, I'm real sorry about the way things turned out, but he had a choice. Ain't my fault about the way the world is.
He didn't have a choice. He was good, and he did good. There wasn't no choice in that. And you've as good as killed him yourself, and don't kid yourself. You had a choice.
You speak as if killing was something I cared about.
You ever wonder about eternity? You should.
I hope it's hot and terrible, Mrs. Downs. Otherwise, I'll feel I've been sold a false bill of goods. Now, please, give me that money. Either you got a lazy eye or lack of respect. Which is it, boy?
I ain't got no lazy eye. No respect for the likes of you.
Well, maybe when your mother's finished mourning your father, I'll keep her in black, on your behalf. You think on that, boy?
Well, maybe you shall, sir. And maybe other events will transpire.
You best stick to them books, because mark my words on this. Vengeance is an idiot's game. Ah, Mrs. Downs, thank you for your punctuality. It's next to godliness, isn't it?
That's cleanliness.
I'll have to take your word on that. Good day.
And like I said, you know, seeing a lot of the other characters too, like Bill, John, Abby, and Jack, and Dutch, and see the younger versions of all of these characters that you grew to know, and seeing who they were and really humanizing them makes it where going back to playing Red Dead Redemption is even that much more heartbreaking than it already was. I would sit there and say that side missions, side quests, and then of course other character quests, you know, quests that you could take with some of the side characters were well done. They were fantastic. Some of them were really heart-wrenching, and some of them were even extremely funny.
You know what?
I don't know.
Why ain't you never married?
Don't have me. That's the thing, you see, because it... Lenny? Lenny! Get away from me! Now! Slippery little shit, ain't you? Come on! Get him! Yeah! Get down from there! Are you in here, Lenny? Come here, boy! Come here! Leave the kid alone, you goddamn animals!
Who do you think you're talking to?
Nobody. I'm talking to nobody.
What did you say?
What?
I said, what did you say?
Get lost, buddy.
Shut up, mister! Yeah, shut your mouth, mister.
And I mean, like I said, that was like the biggest thing. I mean, it goes back to the story. It was just the writing is really, really well done in the game. And more than anything, I mean, I can understand why some people were kind of dismissive of some of the realism. And the one thing people, I think, are all in unison for is the writing was really good. And it wasn't just for Arthur Morgan. I mean, Arthur Morgan, like I said before, obviously he's a huge, huge, huge positive in this game, and who's trapped between, you know, trying to do what he thinks is the right thing, but he's never done the right thing in his life, you know, and he's watching the one man he looked up to really kind of deteriorate and not really knowing what to do with it. It was so well done. But, like I said, a lot of the other characters, you really fell for the characters. So, I mean, not only did you watch and fall in love with some of the characters throughout this game, and you watch some of them die, you watch some of them fucking just get slaughtered, and you do feel bad about it, but some of them, you know, make it into the first game, and like I said, makes it even that much more heart-wrenching when you're having these really close, in-depth side quests, and you have these interactions with all of these side characters. Another really big positive is the open world. Obviously, I know that a lot of people had a big issue dealing with some of the mechanical stuff in the game, where Rockstar was almost kind of sniffing their own farts in a way. And, you know, they're like, well, you're doing too many things, and maybe they kind of were. Things like trying to keep a track of how much you've eaten, how much you've slept, taking a bath, you know, mechanical things that almost are survival-esque type things where you gotta keep eyes on like certain little meters. I didn't mind it as much. I know there was a lot of people that would actually negate points because of it. Believe it or not, actually, that's not one of my negatives. You know, between the open world and then the combat as well, I felt like it meshed well with what they were trying to do with recapturing the Old West type style of gameplay. And I mean, in some ways, it could be perceived as slightly outdated, where there's just too many mechanical things that you have to do or that go on that aren't entirely necessary to the overall experience. And while I understand that some people might have found those things frustrating, for me, I felt it more engrossing. And so I guess really to each their own on that. I get why some people might be annoyed by some of those things, some of the realism in the world. But obviously, if you're like, well, I don't like being tasked with having to watch, you know, certain things, having little meters, you know, my health meter be dictated because I'm not eating enough or I'm not sleeping enough or whatever the case is, then obviously, yeah, you're going to be bothered by it. But to me, it was actually like one of those things where I felt like it was really well done, and I wasn't really all that bothered by it. Combat was really, really good, actually, too. I loved not only the different amount of weapons that you had, but also watching you be able to knock guns out of people's hands or use environmental things like throwing people out of windows or using tables. Something along the lines of like whatever can give you an edge in a battle and a fight with somebody, whether it's a fist fight or a gunfight. It felt natural. It felt, you know, it flowed so well. It didn't take away from the experience of the game as a whole. It felt more like you being able to use certain environmental objects to kind of give yourself an advantage. Felt a little bit like the glory kills in Doom 2016, where it just flowed flawlessly. All the different rifles and the weapons that they had were fantastic. And the ability to customize them. I mean, it's not super deep. I mean, obviously, this can't be a Call of Duty. You're in the Wild West of 1899. I mean, you're not gonna be able to sit there and like totally pimp out your rides, but the ability to sit there and customize your horse, you know, get yourself a custom outfit, you know, all the customizations you can do with your guns. I mean, there's a lot there. You know, improving your your guns with improved rifling and different sights, and even the ability to sit there and customize your metals of your guns or to customize the wooden stock of your gun just involves like deep customization. And as well, going back to your horse, just being able to do different things with their grooming or different saddlebags, different bits, different everything. You're able to sit there and deeply customize not just yourself, but also the tools of destruction and the ways that you get there. This is also to go along with the different breeds of horses as well that are in the game. Nearly 20 different breeds. Another thing that was kind of a positive and a negative, so this is kind of like the neutral zone, might have been the AI, where the AI was kind of inconsistent, to be honest with you. Where sometimes, I mean, you felt like a badass, and I mean, maybe that was the point. But, you know, between your Deadeye and having some of your weapons, once you got some of the customizations and you got some of the abilities opened up and some of the weapons opened up, man, you were just slaughtering people. But sometimes the AI was inconsistent in the way that sometimes they were like fucking magical sharpshooters from across the way. You could barely see them. They're hidden behind a barrel. They're on top of a fucking bank, and they're hitting you. Like, who the hell's hitting me? And other times they're brain dead, standing right in the open while you shoot them with a shotgun. I would say it was slightly frustrating, but at the same time, they weren't mind jack or even ride to fucking hell levels of bad AI. Like I said, it was one of those things where it was kind of a neutral, where it wasn't really, it was a wash more than anything, because Like I said, sometimes the AI, was fucking second medium, and then other times they were brain dead sometimes. Like I said, standing in the open, ready to take a shot. Some of the negatives. Okay, so this is where it gets kind of tricky because, like I said, a lot of people I didn't really see talk about this a lot, but I feel like it needs to be talked about for any few stragglers who haven't either bought the game or have been, waiting for a sale or whatever the case is. And I feel like one of my big negatives of the game is actually to do with slightly with the story, where the writing was really, really good. The structure was kind of wonky sometimes. And what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes throughout the story, you get into a town, because obviously something happens at the beginning of the game where the gang is on the run, and they're wanted by everybody, from the feds to the locals, and they're just trying to find somewhere to hide long enough to get some money and bail out. But the issue is that every time you get into a city, the same thing happens. You get into a fight with somebody, or you have a massive shootout and wind up having to leave town, right? You got to go somewhere else, make a new camp, right? But each time it's like, okay, we just make some money and then we'll be able to go, and we'll make some money and then we'll be able to go, and it's the same structure like 6, 7, 8 times, and it's just one of those things where like it was overdone a bit. Where I heard some people with God of War, they were like, there's too many quests where it's like almost like fetch quests in a way, where like you always need to like one more item. Every time you get to a certain destination, you need one more item to get to it. And some people complained about that structure. The structure's the same way. The biggest difference is that instead of multiple items like with God of War, different relics, different gates needing to be opened, those one more things, it's the same thing with Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's what's so frustrating. It's the same structure of, I need to go get more money so that way I can get away from the law. But then you get caught by the law, you lose your money, and then you gotta repeat the process over in a new area. You get into a fight with somebody and they steal all your money, or, you get, a bunch of fucking gold and the ship that you're on sinks, or whatever the case is, and you're always looking for more money to be able to go find a new life somewhere else. And it's one of those things where it kind of detracts a little bit because it almost gets to the ridiculous. If it happened like 2 or 3 times, I don't even think it would have been that big of a deal, but it happens a lot. 6, 7 times where the feds catch up with you, or the locals, you and the locals get into shootouts. And the other thing that's like kind of head scratching is like, in particular, one of the early areas, the very first places that you go ahead and set up camp, you wind up leaving it because you get into a shootout with the feds and the local cops, right? And you have a big shootout at a bar, and it goes all the way down the street, and you're just slaughtering everybody. So you're like, we gotta pack up, we gotta go, okay? That's fine, not a big issue. But as soon as you go ahead and you set up camp, one of your gang members is like, hey, we were talking about this bank we wanted to rob. Let's go back and rob this bank. And the fact that you can show up and show your face in this town that you just littered with bullets, it makes 0 sense. Now, and I know that some people will sit there and say, well, but Steven, I mean, it's a video game. Why is it such a big deal? And the big deal is that the game is so grounded in realism with so many other aspects that kind of breaks the immersion. For all the times you gotta, wash your horse, or you gotta take a bath, you gotta eat, you gotta sleep, you gotta do all these things, it detracts when you show up in certain areas that you just shot up and you slaughtered like 50 guys, and they're just like, hey, howdy. Or they might sit there and go, and now don't you start any more trouble now, you hear? And it's just weird. Assassin's Creed Odyssey got the same complaint from me, where you got to choose one of 2 sides to sit there and fight on, and to kill people, and have them act like it's no real big deal. I have to give Red Dead Redemption 2 the same kind of negative hit. And this is going back to the positive, so I apologize, but now that it makes me think about it, when you go ahead and, let's say, shoot up a town, the next day if you show up, or if you get into a gunfight or a fist fight and you bust out some windows, the next day you're watching people board them up. And then a couple days later, as there's a day-night cycle, couple days later, there's a new window being put in. You can watch them actually put it in the glass and whatnot, and it adds to that realism. And that part is really cool. But like I said, the fact that, you know, it's almost like, I don't want to say the town forgets you, per se, because, like, sometimes you'll have people walk up to you and they'll remember what you did, but they don't really do anything about it. I mean, I guess technically if I watch somebody run through 42 lawmen, I guess I wouldn't want to fuck with them either, but still, it's just silly. And then it's structured, it does that several times. You know, like another area where you go ahead and you get in a fight with the town locals, because there's a feuding, you know, two feuding sides. And like I said, that part's done really well. But then you get into some shit with them, you leave, and then you have missions that bring you back to that very town that you just left. And it's like, you could have just went ahead and had those missions take place before you did the thing that makes it where you really shouldn't show your face back in the town. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just kind of a goofy, choppy structure in a way. And I mean, like I said, that's my biggest complaint, really, is just the fact that there's a lot of, like, going back and forth. And I mean, you're doing it on horseback, and the map is fucking huge. So it can get a little, I mean, there is fast travel, and I mean, that's something that you'll learn. It's wonky. The only way to fast travel is at a fast travel point. So, because there's a stagecoach, and you can take the stagecoach, and you can pay so much money to fast travel, and I get it, you know, they want you to go see the entire world that they've built, and I get it. There's a lot to explore, tons of wildlife. Not only will you have a bunch of different guns and bow and arrows and all kinds of different weapons to sit there and use traps and stuff, but obviously there's so many different, you know, legendary creatures, and there's like, you know, like an ancient grizzly bear that is like freaking ginormous, and it's got scars all over it, and I mean, that's another really cool thing about the game, is that, yeah, there's a lot of things to explore and a lot of things to find, a lot of things to sit there and make. It's just, there's a lot of great shit in the game to go ahead and check out. But the fact that it kind of forces you to do it is kind of, It's one of those things where, like I said, you spend a lot of time going through, like, side quests, and you got a lot of, you know, character quests and stuff like that you want to do. And they're scattered throughout. You're going to sit there and travel and do all that stuff already, so the fact that there's a lot of main story missions that make you go back and forth as well, it's annoying more than anything. It does detract from the game a little bit. So with that aside, and with some more of that negative than positive, let's get into the very last really, like, deep cut negative, and that's really the online mode. I know there's a lot of people that have talked about it. I wanted to talk about it. So it's cool. The online mode it's definitely frustrating, because the biggest issue with the online mode is the fact that you can tell that they actually took, like, no consideration for all the shit that they did with GTA 5 Online. Now, I get that it's probably a completely different group that went ahead and made it, but at the same time, like, you've been building up GTA 5 Online for, like, the last, 5 fucking years, and you didn't bother to take any of the stuff that you learned from that, stuff to sit there and add more content, more things to do. You know, obviously there's the bugs and the glitches, and I mean, there's always going to be with a multiplayer game. I don't expect that to be perfect like some people do, but at the same time, the fact that, you know, it just feels like they just, all the lessons and all the things that they learned with GTA 5, they just took them and then they just fucking punted them across the fucking room, and like, yeah, fuck that shit, we're gonna start from scratch. And it's aggravating, because, you know, between the connection issues, there was a lot of dropping. I mean, I get that it's probably a little bit smoother now. It's been a month and a half, almost 2 months now since it's been released, but you know, and the fact that the money flow was really slow, and the gold flow was really slow, and I saw that they were actually adding patch notes. I think it was patch notes, talking about how they were going to improve that. So, but at the same time, though, it's just like, the fact that, it's hard to tell, like I said, if it's really just the fact that it's in a group, if it's fucking Zelnick, King Dingus Dongus, to sit there and was like, hey, make sure it's extra grindy because we want to sell them shit. I mean, he's been in enough interviews where he has gone on the record saying that, you know, they didn't monetize enough in GTA 5 online. So it's a bad look when the fact that, yes, multiplayer has a little bit of a story mode, meta is cool, and there's some side quests, and you get to see some Easter eggs. You know, I mean, there were some Easter eggs, obviously, in story mode, and that's another thing that, yeah, that was fantastic. There's some great Easter eggs in the multiplayer, but it's not enough because there's not enough things to do. There's a lot of bugs, and there's just a lot of questionable design decisions that's just like, I get that you can't do everything from GTA 5. I get that. Because GTA 5 is set in modern day, you can sit there and do some futuristic stuff, you can kind of fuck with it a little bit more. I get it. But no, you know what? No, this isn't how you do multiplayer. I'm sorry. It's 2018. Now it's 2019, okay? The time for this bullshit early access beta fucking shit. You've had 8 years to work on it. You've had 5 years of GTA 5 experience to fucking integrate into this. Okay? So to start from scratch, call it a fucking beta, have it grindy as hell, with no fucking content, is unacceptable. It's time to fucking stop with that shit. I mean, look at this shit! Or this! There's a lot of people that are disappointed with it, and to be honest with you, I was so disappointed with it, I almost actually thought about just knocking off a point off the score, and part of me was like, well, I don't give multiplayer a pass per se. It's just, obviously, is that the biggest reason why I play Red Dead Redemption? Is the biggest reason why most people play Red Dead Redemption? And the answer is pretty much no. And we all know that. I know that. So I figured I'd just go ahead and make sure it wouldn't go ahead and remove a point. But honestly, if they would have really, really hammered it home at release and had an even bigger, meatier release at the launch of it all, it could have raised it up to a 10 out of 10, honestly. Because even though there's obviously the big negative that I have with the story structure in the single player, having an amazing multiplayer and a still really remarkable single player for the most part, easily a fucking 10 out of 10. So while, like I said, it doesn't really take away points, it had an opportunity to give it extra points. And with that, let's wind this review down finally. I know it's been a little bit of a long one. And let's give the final verdict. Now I was teetering for a minute, actually, about what I wanted to give this game. Was it an 8 out of 10? Was it a 9 out of 10? Where part of me feels like I wouldn't be in the absolute wrong to give it an 8 out of 10. I will indeed give it a 9 out of 10. Because I just love the story, I just love the characters, and I loved a lot of the things that were actually really, really well done in this game. And even though the multiplayer didn't add anything to it, the fact that there's just really only one or two, like, nagging, nitpicky kind of complaints that I have about the single player, I don't feel like I could, in good conscience, give it an 8 out of 10. And it does get my OnTheShelf special rating. Obviously, if you don't have the game, you should go get it, go pick it up. It's a really great game. I mean, I sunk probably 60 or 70 hours into it myself, and I still got a little bit more left to do with the prologue. The best games that came out last year, and 2018 was really good, and I really wanted to get this review up, like I said, sooner, and I apologize for it not being out sooner. That's something in 2019 that I want to work on, to getting reviews out a lot sooner. But I guess that's it for now. I'm going to start working on the Battlefield 5 review and get that out. I want to talk about what the game has done so far, and then I want to talk about where I think it's going. It's going to be kind of a discussion as well as a review. So stay tuned for that. And then Resident Evil 2 Remake, I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm going to try and see if I can't sit there and kind of sneak in some other reviews and talk about some other stuff as other games are coming out, because next month's going to be extremely busy. You know, I'm gonna review Metro Exodus. I'm gonna review Crackdown 3. I'm gonna review Far Cry New Dawn. I'm going to review Anthem. I will actually start streaming Anthem. So if anybody's interested and if anybody wants to come check me out, for now, my Twitch is Sensei2312 at Twitch TV, so come check me out if you want to. I'd appreciate it. And so yeah, I'll also add other links and stuff like that down below too for social media if you want to follow me. Like what I have to say. You somewhat enjoy the video, give me a thumbs up, give me a comment, let me know what's up, subscribe. And until then, I will go ahead and see you guys on the next On the Shelf.